Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I have to do a ranking video now that I reviewed Evil Dead Rise. And this ranking video obviously is for the Evil Dead series. I dropped my phone with my rankings in them. Let me grab it. Okay, here we go. Evil Dead series, of course. This list will happen to include Ash vs. Evil Dead. Many of you may have not seen it. I'm not going to spoil anything about it, but of course it's the return of Ash, according to the title. That will be included with ranking the films. I won't be doing season by season in the ranking. It'll just be the 5 movies and Ash vs. Evil Dead included somewhere in that list. So just so you know, as a heads up, getting into the list. Now, just so you also know, I'm not a big Evil Dead guy. In case you guys haven't seen the previous reviews leading up to this video, I'm not a big Evil Dead guy. I was nervous about Evil Dead Rise. Gave kind of a negative review. And a lot of these movies I just kind of tolerate. But there are 2 in particular that I genuinely love, and if you haven't seen the reviews, maybe this will be a nice surprise for you. It's going to be different than a lot of people's rankings, I think, because one of the best, according to most fans, hardcore fans at least, is pretty close to my bottom of the ranking. Not my bottom, but the ranking of the bottom. Anyway, so let's start off at the bottom of the list for me. Worst to best. My personal least favorite of this series is Evil Dead 2. Are we off to a new foot between you and I? So, Evil Dead 2 came out in 1987. It was kind of the project that Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell describe as what they would have done with the original Evil Dead if they had the budget back in 81. Now, for me, I hate the comedic route that it took. I think it was a horrible decision. I know it's what they wanted to do originally, coming from a comedy background, but I didn't like that at all. I think it's horrible. And every time I go to watch this film, out of the 3 or 4 times I've seen it now, as soon as I get to the 3rd act, I hate it again. I don't like this movie. Is it well made? Kinda. It has some improved film work and that kind of thing, the camera work. That stuff is creative. I like it. It's got a couple of cool ideas, a couple of cool moments. Bruce Campbell is more of the comedy Bruce Campbell that we're used to nowadays. Not entirely there like an Army of Darkness, but he's pretty good. It's not too bad. I am not in love with this film at all, as you can tell. I really don't like it that much to begin with. I think it has a couple of okay moments, but it kind of sucks, if I'm being honest with you. I think it's a really rough film because it slaps that first movie in the face. It's a serious film. This is not. Evil Dead 2, very much to me, is a massive disappointment because of what it chose to do. And what it eventually turned Evil Dead into seems to be what most of the hardcore fans seem to love about it. And I'm kind of glad for them. But for me, that 81 film is a classic. An absolute terrifying classic with atmosphere from beginning to end. From credits to credits, basically. It scared me to death the first time I ever saw it. And I've loved it ever since. But to see what Evil Dead 2 did, as I said in my review, it's kind of shocking. Every time I watch it, it just surprises me and shocks me what they basically slap you in the face with. But that's just me. I've never been a fan of it. I know it's the fan favorite, typically, but it is not mine, obviously. So my number 5 pick out of the series and the shows, or the show and the movies, whatever, the number 5 pick, the next to the bottom, is Ash vs. Evil Dead. It's 3 seasons long, ran from 2015 to 2018. It's 30 episodes. They're about a half an hour apiece outside of the pilot. And I'm thankful for that. The 30-minute runtime per episode really gave a show that didn't have a whole lot going for it, aside from Ash, a better pace. And I really like that about it. Of course, we also get Lucy Lawless, who played Xena in this show. And she's mostly good. A little weird after season 1 and 2, but, mostly fine. The show for me is that it meanders too much on stuff that I really don't think work for Evil Dead. Mainly in Season 1, kind of in Season 3, but Season 2 really gets it well, and it really knows what it's doing. I like the focus on Ash as a person, but a lot of the things we did in Season 3 are things that I think should have been done in Evil Dead Rise, but we did not get that. So I wasn't a big fan of that series. I think it's kind of a character assassination on Ash in the first season, at least in the first episode of the show, the pilot, because of how the Necronomicon comes into play, how the Deadites seem to be showing back up in our reality. It just doesn't seem right. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't. The supporting cast really had nothing to do in Season 1 and Season 3. More in Season 2, but not by much. It has some truly iconic moments in it. But out of 30 episodes, 3 whole seasons, does it really? Is really the question here. Meh. That's really the word I have to throw out there. Meh. The average of taking my review and my rating for each of those seasons, which I reviewed separately, by the way, the amount of blandness and genericness I feel from this show, with all of its CGI shitty gore, that has some practical cutaways and stuff, but mostly CGI bullshit, I feel like it just doesn't get it right. Most of the time I feel like it does not get it right. That's just my thoughts. I think Ash vs. Evil Dead is really good for the hardcore fans, a lot of them. But I know some who aren't crazy about the show either. I'm kind of glad it's just not me. I mean, like I said, I'm not a hardcore diehard over Evil Dead. But usually I can recognize the appeal in certain things. But series like Scream, series like this, not really. Not really for me. I don't. But anyway, moving along to the next thing after Ash vs. Evil Dead, my number 4 on the list is the newest 2023 movie, 10 years after the original remake that we got, Evil Dead Rise. Evil Dead Rise was a massive disappointment for me. I don't care what other people are saying about it being so positively rated. As far as I'm concerned, this might be a spoiler for you. I'm not going to give you major spoilers, but just in case you don't happen to know, if you haven't seen it yet, Evil Dead Rise is essentially an all-female cast, Ghostbusters Answer the Call, Melissa McCarthy bullshit remake of Evil Dead. That's basically what it is. And the fans might be okay with that, but it seems like the shills are more okay with that. It is a woke piece of shit movie. And it has some okay gore moments in it. It has a ton of CGI that looks better than Ash vs. Evil Dead, I'll give it that. But I expected better of Evil Dead Rise. The trailer looked generic. I wasn't excited about it based on that alone. Everybody else were losing their fucking minds. I thought it looked terrible, frankly. Or just generic at the very highest. And then I saw it today. And after sitting through all 4 films again, 2 or 3 of those I really love and like, and then the show, which I'd never seen until this year, leading up to this movie, I really expected more out of Evil Dead Rise. But again, it's just an all-female cast remake, like Ghostbusters Answer the Call with Melissa McCarthy. It just feels like such a poor choice, and it has some things in it that they seem to care about. They have some certain themes and whatever that I kind of understand. I understand what they were doing with that. It has a couple of cool things, maybe 2 or 3. It has an amazing performance from the mother that's possessed as a Deadite in the movie. I think her name is Alyssa Sutherland, I believe. Fantastic performance. Really the best highlight of the entire film. The thing this film will be remembered for is her performance. She's excellent. You also have the aunt in the film, who I think is really good too. The 3 kids are okay. There's some weird shit about a bank underneath the apartment complex that was hidden, that had like a new Necronomicon inside of it. That was weird too. Might sound like a spoiler, but it's pretty much set up pretty early on. Not really a big spoiler, but it was... It's not that it was sloppy. It just, to me, again, the remake from 2013 felt like it did everything perfectly. Pretty much, as a kind of a remake. A real official, listed as a remake with a lot of Evil Dead references in it. And I loved it. I really did. It's one of my highest rated on this list, as a matter of fact. Sorry, I'm getting over some allergies right now. I rated that film fairly high on my list, and you'll see it in a moment. But Evil Dead Rise feels like it's the direction that we could have went, the timeline we could have went, where the Evil Dead remake from 2013 was a piece of shit 10 years ago. Like, it feels like if it had turned bad, if it was a bad movie, this feels like it would have been that way. This feels like it would have been that movie. Evil Dead Rise would have been that remake. It does not work for me. It does not work for me, and I'm not happy about it really at all. It's got a couple of cool things in there, but I rated it fairly low, if you haven't seen my review yet. But anyway, not a big fan of Evil Dead Rise, as you can tell. Not a big fan of the series in general. Haven't reviewed the video games or anything like that. But, oh well. Not a fan of it. Moving along to my number 3 pick. This is where I start to like the movies. Army of Darkness. Not in the series timeline, I mean, of when I start to like the film. Of course, obviously, I like the original. It's in my list of my top 3. But number 3 being Army of Darkness. It came out in 1992, and it feels like a 90s film. It's a medieval setting. It's Ash stuck in medieval days, and it's super fun. It's like a giant-ass cartoon on the camera. And you may wonder how I could hate Evil Dead 2 so deeply and barely admire anything about it, but then love this. Well, Evil Dead 2, to me, feels like a misstep. Again, it not only feels distracting and distasteful compared to the original film being scary, being genuinely frightening. It feels disgraceful to insult that movie and then make Evil Dead 2 be a giant fucking comedy with some horror elements, but in a poor way. But Army of Darkness really lands it. It's kind of not just a horror film. It's kind of just not a comedy. It's a fantasy film, too. And it seems to me like every single part of it, pretty much, works. I like all of it. I think Bruce Campbell is the best that he's ever been in the whole series. Easily. Super funny, super iconic. Most of the memorable lines that people remember from Ash Williams is from Army of Darkness. It's just a great flick all around. I think it's super fun to watch, super enjoyable. The horror elements are really cool, really fun. The stop-motion animation stuff is really well done, even better than Evil Dead 2 and 1, in my personal opinion. I think Army of Darkness really knows how to have fun. And that's the best part about it, in my personal opinion. I love it for that. It's more of a like, but I do love a lot of things in it. It's very, very lightly flawed, if I'm being honest with you. But I really enjoy it. Both times I've seen the film, I really, really had a blast. It's a film I saw clips of on Bravo's Top 100 Scariest Movie Moments when I was a child, and it frightened me quite a bit. But eventually I saw it, recently rewatched it for the first time ever to talk about it for the channel, and it has some great, fun, enjoyable moments that really make it worthwhile. But a lot of Evil Dead doesn't have that for me. Army of Darkness, super fun, very 90s film, but really enjoyable. Should not have worked as a medieval horror comedy tied to the Evil Dead films. But it was great, in my opinion. Move along to my number 2. By the way, you might wonder why I'm not holding up movie after movie. It's because I don't own most of these. I have like 2 of them. And my entire movie collection behind me, I have 2 movies from this franchise. My number 2 pick is the original 1981 Evil Dead. This is a great flick. Like I said, very atmospheric, super fun. We don't really have Ash Williams in this that we have from Part 2, mainly Part 3, Army of Darkness, and onward. The funny, quippy dude is not in this film. It's just a scary-ass movie about a bunch of friends going to a cabin, and they're trapped, and they're getting possessed if they get hurt or cut or scratched or killed by these demon, deadite, demonic entity things that came out of this spell book that they found down in the basement. It's super enjoyable, it's super spooky, has a lot of really cool shit in it. It really does. A lot of really great effects, some stop-motion stuff that I think really surpassed its time. I think some of Sam Raimi's directing is better than John Carpenter's 1978 classic Halloween. I really mean that. I know it's like 5 years later. Well, I can't do math. 4? 79, 80, 81. 3. I can't fucking count. I am so sorry. Anyway, 3 years prior to it. I think this film has a lot going for it 3 years later. It's just a great flick. All around, I think Sam Raimi really created something very special here. It feels like a first-time film in some aspects, but most of the time it doesn't. It's really super impressive to be as good as it is. And when you hear the behind-the-scenes stuff about what they went through making this movie, and the stuff that poor Sam Raimi did, the director of Spider-Man, who I love deeply, when you hear some of the things he did to make this movie, he and his cast, Bruce Campbell, everybody else involved, it's touching. Because they really cared about this film, obviously. But it is such a special flick. It's the first Evil Dead film I ever saw. It scared the hell out of me, and I've loved it ever since. I think it's a fantastic movie. But it is not as good as my number 1 pick, and that is the 2013 remake, Evil Dead. You can't really see it because of all the glare in here, I'm sorry, but Evil Dead from 2013. I saw this in my senior year, when it came out in 2013. Sorry, I'm still fighting my allergies as I record this. Evil Dead's remake is not really just a straight-out remake. It's kind of like a soft reboot, but kind of not. It has tons of references all over it to the Evil Dead series, very much like Evil Dead Rise has as well, but this film did it better. Again, Evil Dead Rise is what this film could have been in a timeline where that had been the first ever remake, if you will. This is one that's, again, not really a remake, but it's super powerful. It's focused on this analogy about drug addiction and a girl just trying to be rehabilitated from her drug addiction at a cabin that she grew up hanging around in. Her brother comes to help her. Her friends come to unite around her, too, to help take care of her get through this rehabilitation process. It's touching. It's very touching. It has a lot of heart and soul to it. More than Evil Dead Rise, more than a lot of the Evil Dead films, in my personal opinion. It feels like Fede Alvarez, I believe is his name, that directed the film, really gave a shit about making an incredible film that had nothing but, what I could tell, practical effects aside from some CGI fire in the movie. The practical effects are so bloody, and I would argue this is one of the bloodiest films ever made, if not the bloodiest movie ever made. It is so effective. Not only because the emotion, the heart, the amazing characters in the film that are not developed so much in their personality, but how they love each other. And how they love this girl who's getting over her drug addiction that they care about. Those things are so extremely powerful. And I remember those things being hot topics debated at the time when this came out in 2013. Me being in high school, being a big horror fan, talking about this with my friends. A lot of them knew people who were into drugs, who went to see this movie because of me talking about it with them. And I would not be surprised if this film helped some people, very much like its analogy in the film, fight their own personal demons. I really think it's possible. This is an incredible movie. It is so beautifully shot. It is easily the most well-made of the entire series of movies. It's sad to me that people, the fans loved this. They really did. And I think a lot of normies like myself really love it too. But it seems like to me, Evil Dead Rise is kind of dethroning this film for whatever fucking reason. But this is incredible. I think it's an incredible flick. It looks, it feels better. The writing is better. The directing is better. All of it. The set with the cabin in the woods and all of that. It's just a massive improvement over everything in this whole series for me personally, and my personal taste. I love it. I think it's absolutely incredible, and it easily deserves #1 for me. I love the contrast between the original film having the blue cover, the newer one having the red cover. I think both are beautiful. I think they're both incredible films, like I said, this being my #2 and this being my #1. But both movies deserve their audience. They really do. Both of these are absolute classics, but this one is my absolute favorite. The 2013 film is pretty much perfect to me. I don't really have any major complaints about it at all. I didn't really have many in my review, even, if I had any at all. It's just so great. There's not really any words to describe how great it is. I actually like this a lot more than a lot of the horror classics you know, like, well, when it comes to quality filmmaking. I have nostalgic memories on certain things that I like more because of those memories, but I think quality-wise, this is better than certain films that you know of, like Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street. Even though I'm a big Freddy Krueger fan and a big Michael Myers fan, more than Evil Dead, when it comes to my personal taste in films, I think that, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. I think this has a whole lot more going for it than most movies, in any subgenre, any regular genre, anything like that. I think it really is spectacular in so many ways, and very overlooked. Not by the Evil Dead fans, but by just the casual horror fan. It's a classic. It's kind of the thing I want to get into, kind of a place to rewatch every year, because I love it so much. And I haven't really given it the chance to watch it more often in the last 10 years, mainly in the last 5. But I used to watch it all the time. Like when it came to theater, and then when I got it on DVD, this particular copy, I watched it constantly. I loved it. I think I've seen it probably 6 or 7 times, maybe 4 or 5 times, somewhere in there. It's been a lot, though. I've watched it a lot back when it first came out. And it's wonderful. It's absolutely beautiful, absolutely wonderful as a film, and I recommend it so highly. With all that being said, though, that is my Evil Dead ranking of the 5 films in the TV show Ash vs. Evil Dead included. I hope that you guys will let me know your thoughts and comments down below in a very civil way, so we don't have to fight and shoot at each other and shit. Because no one wants to play, that kind of war shit down in the comments. That's just my personal opinion, though, on what I think about this movie series. Again, I'm not a hardcore fan. Maybe you'll understand where I'm coming from when it comes to things like Evil Dead Rise and like Ash vs. Evil Dead, or even Evil Dead 2 being at the bottom of the list, but I'm sorry, I don't regret it. a lot of these things are just, to me, super overrated. I think Evil Dead 2 is a fucking mess, and I'll stand by it. Anyway, not to insult you guys. I don't mean to. I have a lot of friends who are big Evil Dead fans. But for now, that's pretty much my thoughts. I don't know if I'm going to make any more videos anytime soon. I'm going to take a break, I think, for a little while. I wanted to get into some other series, but I think I'm going to take some time to really kind of recoup my brain. I'm not really sure what I want to do with this channel, if I'm being honest with you. I've said this over and over again in different community posts and different things in the past and different videos, but I'm still struggling with what to do with this channel. And I'm sorry about that, I just am. So hopefully you guys will stick around. Just wait me out a little bit. Anyway, here is the review, rating, whatever, for the Evil Dead series. Thank you guys for watching. God bless you guys. Put your thoughts and comments down below once again. What was your top, well, I guess show your listing, your rating series, ranking series, whatever, down in the comment section down below. I'd love to see all that as well. Don't just tell me about why I'm wrong. Show me why you like certain things and what order you like them in. I love seeing ranking lists. Anyway, excuse me. Before I lose my voice, I'm going to go ahead and leave. Thank you guys so much. God bless you all, and goodbye.